Today, we are learning basketball with Stephen Bagell at the NBA, a certified NIL agent and a podcast host of two podcasts, the Bird Rights Pod, and the One and Done Pod. And he's also the SBC Director of Brand and Operations for the Center Hub, where he writes and covers the NBA and NCAA. Appreciate you taking the time today, Stephen. Excited to hear a little bit about your path and what you've been up to in the basketball world. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ryan. I appreciate you having me on. It's been busy to say the least. College basketball is approaching. NBA. There's no real off season in the NBA, depending how you cover it. For us at the Center Hub, it went from the playoffs right into the draft, right into free agency. So yeah, there's a little bit of a dead period right now, I would say. But now we're focusing on college basketball and doing all that coverage. So, but it's been good.
Absolutely. And that's a little what we're here to talk about. I thought we could bounce around a little bit, hear a little bit about the NIL world, what that kind of whole landscape is like now that you're entering that, but also maybe highlight some of the storylines heading into the 2025-26 NCAA season. You just wrote a great article highlighting literally the top 100 storylines. So we're going to hit on some of our favorites heading into the next college year. And lastly, I thought you could help break down the Orlando Magic cap situation, which has just gotten a little, I don't know, confusing, tangled up with all these big deals. There's like 3 different max salaries that are all different amounts. Like, what's going on? How does the math work with that? I would love to just dive into the weeds a little bit there. But I thought first we could hit on a little bit of your journey, your background with, becoming a certified NIL agent. And if you could just highlight a little bit what the landscape looks like for the NIL world, like what opportunities that opens up for you. And, if you want to talk about any goals you have with that'd be great as well. But, what does becoming an NIL agent certified allow you to do?
So it's certified, but it's basically for the state of Pennsylvania. I'm from the Philadelphia area, just for reference, if listeners didn't know that. But my ultimate goal, I still think at this point, is to be on the team side. Whether it was always to work in NBA front office as like a salary cap guy or CBA guy, something along those lines. But throughout the years, I feel like the more I've gotten into college basketball and like how many college jobs are now opening in terms of like schools having GMs and all that. And I'm also an attorney in my day job. So NIL being a thing for college teams as well is, contract work, all that. Like, that opens the door for a lot more opportunities for me, specifically to work on the team side. But I always did want to be a certified agent, similar to how I suppose Rob Pelinka, Bob Myers did it. Like, Pelinka was Kobe Bryant's agent, and then ended up being the GM of the Lakers shortly thereafter. So, like, that's an avenue. It's a legitimate avenue. Again, maybe those are the only 2 examples of it. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But, I do want to take the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association exam, to be a certified agent to represent pros, NBA players, G Leaguers. But it's difficult to upkeep that license financially without any clients. So I figured, okay, why don't I would say the NIL is more the wild, wild west right now in terms of just getting like, you don't need to take a test or anything to get certified for it, depending on the state. So I said, why don't I jump into the NIL first, build up clientele that way, and then when they're ready to go pro, that's sort of when I'll sit for the exam for the NBPA, and then it makes it more financially feasible for me to upkeep that license. So I applied with the Pennsylvania Department of State. Again, I call it the Wild Wild West because you don't need to be like a certified agent for a test, but again, there's no real qualification, so that's why I can't really explain it. But I will say the law degree definitely helped me. With my background in negotiations, my background in contracts, I think that's ultimately what got me certified. But yeah, so now I could get reciprocity with other states if I want to. If there's a client I'm really after in another state, I have to apply to that state. Same process I went through in Pennsylvania. But yeah, NIL's opened a lot of doors, and I figure why not jump in it now while it's still more unregulated in terms of like it's more of an open marketplace, because the NCAA is going to have to do something eventually. Like, so we'll see. But I said let me jump in now while I can.
Yeah, that's a great, you know, example of foresight, I think, on your part to see kind of landscape of the NIL, world, and 100% in terms of just the way front offices are shaking out on every level now. Like it is the wild wild west in the
Yeah.
NIL world, like absolutely. And NCAA colleges programs now have front offices like NBA teams do, so they need all the same sort of resources and smart people like yourself that cover all the contracts and follow all these rules in house to you know also know how to exploit the holes or exploit the loopholes and find advantages, whether it's in different ways that can incentivize contracts, what incentivize players for recruiting. It's super interesting to kind of see where it's all going to go, if there's going to be any big changes from higher up that will change some of the rules a little bit. But until then, it's just kind of like professional sports with no salary cap, and like anyone can pretty much pay for any team they want depending on the how big the program is and whatnot. And it's super interesting. Is this the sort of topics you cover on your podcast, the Bird Rights Pod, and the one and done's probably more of the college side of things.
Yeah.
But how do you dig into these sort of things and the transfer portal and how all that plays out on your podcast? And do you have any advice to people trying to break into this world, whether it's the NIL agency, whether it's the podcast, the media? Obviously, nowadays a lot of it goes hand in hand, and you kind of have to wear a lot of different hats to show what you can do.
So it's a tough question because I've basically been doing the media aspect for years now. The Bird Rights Pod I think is going on 4 years already, which is unbelievable that I've been doing this for that long.
Big time, congrats.
But thank you. But Bird Rights is again mostly NBA front office niche type stuff. In terms of like salary cap, all that. One and done. I started. We're going on year 3 almost. Yeah, We're finishing year 2, going on to year 3 for college basketball with my co-host John Simpson. That's more college basketball centric. We actually had Richard Kent, who's an NIL expert and sports law professor at Rutgers Law School, on the other day. That was a super intriguing episode. So yeah, we do talk NIL, transfer portal, stuff like that. I did cover 39 college basketball games this year, basically in the entire Northeast region as credentialed media. I covered the Big East tournament in MSG, which was electric. I mean, I've been to MSG a couple times before, but MSG, it's awesome, especially like you're there covering a game. Like, it was definitely something I crossed off the bucket list of the Big East tournament. But yeah, so I've been doing the media because you never know who's going to listen to it. So like, I have a lot of people who've asked me, okay, admittedly, my podcasts don't get the most listens, but you never know who's going to listen to it. It only takes one person to really be impressed by your stuff. So people have told me, oh, my podcast gets 15 listens episodes. That's fine. Just keep plugging away. Like, it only takes one of those 15 people to be someone that's really impressed and wants to give you a shot, So in terms of advice, that's definitely something I would say. Don't get discouraged. Just content's king. Keep being consistent. Keep churning away. Again, I've been doing the media for years. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm also not planning on slowing down at all either. If the media, unless like again the NIL agent, now if that suddenly takes off, that's a little bit of a conflict of interest. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, no, that's great advice. I think the numbers and the FOMO of like getting caught up in the content creation of it all can kind of overwhelm creators and people just in this industry, because like a lot of people, like I'm like myself, I probably view myself in that realm where I'm not necessarily like trying to be a content creator as much as I'm creating content that is my a portfolio of work, whether it's data viz portfolio or writing or film breakdown, scouting, similar as you're doing on your podcast. So like you said, I mean, just being consistent, you never know who's listening, especially like doing stuff that you're passionate about and skilled at and experience that and knowledgeable of, like you express that in a platform that people can enjoy it and appreciate it, learn from it. And like you said, it only takes, one person or the right person to kind of see what you're saying and put you on from that opportunity. And, it's funny, like one random quote that stuck with me is like 50, followers doesn't sound a lot when you're seeing all these like, videos with thousands of views or millions of views. But like if you had 50 people in a room, like listening to you for an hour, like you'd be commanding the room, and there'd be, that's a pretty big room for what is basically just a conversation that other people are listening in on. So it's interesting to kind of think of it like that. And like, who else is interested in these topics other than other experts or people that are really just want to hear everything they can about this type of stuff. So, you're bound to cross paths the more you do it. And that's, one of the goals of this Learning Basketball podcast is, to meet people like yourself and connect here in the basketball industry, and just kind of learn a little bit, come away from it, learn a little bit something new, a little different. Hopefully us and the listeners just learn a little something different about basketball that maybe they didn't view a perspective or experience that way. So the more the merrier when it comes to that.
I will say, have you ever heard of Sports Business Classroom?
No, I've heard of them though. They do good work from what I can tell.
So I was in class of 2024. I did it. It's during summer league every year. It's a week-long course. You're basically in class all day during summer league. And I'm frozen. Can you hear me? Okay, I see I'm back.
There we go. We got you.
Good. I did it last year. It was a great experience. They do video scouting and analytics as one major. They do salary cap as another, and now they have a third one for agents to take. So they do a mock trade deadline as like the final project, where like you're literally running table to table to each team trying to get trades done, making sure the agents are okay with it. You have the agent. It's a super fun process. Eric Pincus is the director of it from Bleacher Report, and Bobby Marks from ESPN is now the head instructor. I'm sure if people are listening to this pod, they would have some interest in doing that, doing Sports Business Classroom. Again, I had no vested interest in anyone doing it. I'm honestly promoting because it did help me learn a lot about the industry in terms of like do's and don'ts. So that's just another thing I thought I'd throw out there to recommend.
Yeah, that's a great shout. Great shout. Definitely a good resource for people to look into and learn from people directly in the field with that experience. And shifting gears a little bit towards, the college basketball NCAA 2025-26 season coming up. You dropped an article pretty recently, the top 100 storylines heading into the season. You can find the article on the Center Hub. So, I got to ask you, I thought we could run through a couple of our favorite storylines here, maybe like top 3, top 5, if any really pops out for you. We could just kind of take turns on some of your favorite storylines. But, what is your favorite storyline heading into the next season for college hoops?
Oh, my favorite storyline. Again, I wrote 100 about them. That's how little I was able to narrow down.
Got to pick just one here.
Let me go with the ACC being back.
It is.
The ACC the last 2 years, I think, had 4 bids and 3 bids, which for the ACC, given Duke and Carolina are usually 2 of the locks. Like that's saying something, that they only got 3 and 4 bids last couple of years. We saw historically good coaches like Roy Williams and Coach K and Jim Boeheim and Tony Bennett. All 4 of those coaches won national championships. They all left that conference and retired due to the new landscape, partially of NIL and the transfer portal, and the game evolved so much, those coaches just didn't. Again, they all retired. But I know Tony Bennett retired because he couldn't keep up with the new landscape. But 4 legendary national championship winning coaches in, conference is down a little bit. I think it's coming back up in terms of the coaches. Will Wade at NC State, Ryan Odom, who I love that hire. He was at UMBC when they upset Virginia as a 16 seed in March Madness, and now he's at Virginia coaching them. I think that's awesome. That's full circle moment there. Who else? Will Wade, Ryan Odom. I know they have Coach Locks, who was on the Sacramento Kings bench. We'll see what he could do at Florida State. Leonard Hamilton is also a borderline Hall of Fame coach if he's not already in. So it's just, there's a lot of turnover, and replacing those legendary shoes is going to be Pat Kelsey. Obviously, was hired by Louisville last year. Like Pitino was at one point at Louisville as well. Like you'll replace these historically good coaches with huge shoes to fill. I think the ACC is finally on the right track in terms of filling those shoes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the NC or the ACC might actually be back here. I mean, Duke looks like another powerhouse as well. I mean, obviously like you bring in the Boozer twins. I really love what I've seen from Sebastian Wilkins too. I believe he's still headed to Duke, and like he's just a wiry big wing that is going to be super impressive. They brought back a lot of talent. Obviously, that's the big team in the room that the rest of the ACC probably has to catch up to, I suppose. But like you said, maybe it's finally turning around for some of these programs. You got Luke Locks, you mentioned, has a lot of success around the NBA. Finally, FSU changing gears. Excited to see kind of what that looks like. They got kind of bogged down ever since the pandemic at Florida State. They looked really good right before that went down and haven't really bounced back since. So hopefully the ACT does come back a little bit. I'm gonna go with Houston as my favorite storyline heading into next year. We got JoJo Tugler, Milos Uzan, but that is just a really like impressive defensive, energetic Kelvin Sampson team that plays really hard. But I love the recruits too. Like they're adding Chris Senack and Kingston Flemings and Isaiah Harwell. But like I know a little bit more about Flemings and Senack and a little more familiar with their game. And I know Harwell is a really top prospect as well. But Senack could be a legit like stretch for like modern big man. And I'm excited to see him at the college level, see how that translates. Kingston Flemings, really impressive, like point guard, just does it all. Like you'll see box scores of his stat lines, just like 40 points and 10 assists, 4 steals, just filling it up on every level. So just excited to see like all this talent mixed with just an incredible program. Like I think they could be one of the clear contenders and big favorites going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare for a team to go to the national championship and bring back as much as Houston brings back.
Right. And adding this star talent, in my opinion,
yeah,
I mean,
of course,
this is like three potential first round picks, I think. And by my measure, I mean, maybe at least 3 potential draft picks. I'm not sure if you have them on that level, but Senak's talked about like a lottery pick, and Flemings and Harwell, I think, are both talked about like first round picks as well. Yeah.
Again, possible. Odds are against all 3 actually being first round picks, at least this year. But sure. No, all 3 definitely in the conversation. And that's assuming JoJo Tugler doesn't take a huge step. I mean, he very well could. He's one of the best defenders in the country. Like,
right.
It's not that far-fetched to say he ends up being a first-round pick as well.
Yeah.
And, of course, Milos Uzan as well, isn't that? So, yeah.
Just an abundance of talent. Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted Tugler. Like, he's the guy to me. Like, absolutely. Like, he's the proven commodity with that defense. Like, he is a possible defensive anchor there. What would be one of your next favorite storylines?
Let's go with the Big East and the house settlement.
Okay.
With the house settlement, each school got, I think, $20.5 million was the number to basically spend on NIL this year. Most of those schools, obviously, like if we're talking ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, those schools, the majority, none of them, football's dominant. We know that. Football is what runs college athletics. So much of that $20.5 million is going to those schools' football program. Even Duke and Kentucky, at most, are splitting 50-50 between football and basketball. Because football, there's also 105 guys on the roster. Basketball, there's 15. So to say what it is, on top of football being the dominant sport in collegiate sports. But the Big East, there's UConn and there's Villanova. No other Big East team, if my understanding, has a football program. So that $20.5 million they got, the majority of it is going towards basketball. So we were talking about NIL earlier here. The Big East had a huge advantage, if we're being honest, because they don't need to split that house revenue, that share with the football program. Aside from UConn, UConn is probably the one school in the country, I would say. Them and Villanova, because Villanova's FCS, so not even FBS football team. Those two are prioritizing the most of their NIL going towards basketball. So the Big East, just overall, had a huge advantage. They really did in terms of being able to capitalize on the house settlement. I thought that was a really fun one. And it's funny because I was a little down on the Big East this year in terms of like what they did in the offseason. So it's a little ironic.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of kind of how that kind of played out with the Big East and how they kind of get a little bit of an advantage in their team building. I know, for example, like one recruit I'm really high on, Caden Lewis, is transferred to Villanova,
Yep.
or I guess recommitted to Villanova after being committed to Kentucky. Maybe that had something to do with it as well. But I know I love watching Creighton play anytime they're out there. I hope they kind of you know still look like themselves. They've had Ryan Kalkbrenner playing center for them for like what feels like 5 years, but maybe it was just 4 years. But I want to see their new look with the new talent as well. Kind of how they refill the cupboard a little bit. But definitely interested see how the Big East plays out. There's definitely some interesting storylines with St. John's as well and all that. But the next one for me, I'm gonna go. If Duke and Houston are kind of the top two, I'm going with Iowa. They hire Ben McCollum from Drake, and they keep Bennett Sturts, who's looking like he's the real like wild card this year. Where like he could have been drafted last year. Maybe he thinks he can get his draft stock even higher this year. Which in a bigger program, the same coach, if he produces anything like he did at Drake as this like all around incredible scoring point guard talent, if he's anything like that, which he should just translate right over to similar level of hoops. Like we're looking at one of the breakout players possible of the whole college basketball this year. And I think could easily see his name shoot up the lottery boards and into that lottery talk pretty quickly. Excited to see kind of, how that program looks. What do you think of that program in year one? How that will kind of look under Ben McCollum?
It's crazy that McCollum was basically coaching Division 2 years ago, and now he's in the Big Ten. Like that is a historic like coaching rise. So good for him. I really do like Bennett Sturts. I actually put in a little wager for Ben Sturts to win National Player of the Year, and like the odds were insane. So I said, why not?
That's a good bet. At those odds.
Yeah, I don't have the odds in front of me, so I don't want to say what they were because again, off the top of my head, but it was insane. It was like plus 15,000 or something. So yeah, I do think Sturts is a legitimate first round pick. Some people have him in the lottery. I have to see how he plays in Big Ten play before I'm there. Again, this is a guy who played Division 2 for a couple years and then played in the Missouri Valley last year. Which again, Missouri Valley is very fun, very competitive conference. But until I, see him do it on the bigger stage at the Big Ten, I don't know if I could get him in the lottery. But, I mean, McCollum's fun. Like, he's going to end up being an NBA coach, in my opinion, with, like, the sets he runs. And so many people have just said so many great things about him. I think he might be one of the top coaches in college basketball that could make the jump to the NBA. And it's the guy who was coaching D2 a couple years ago.
That's wild. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. His results are out here. Like, just watch how efficient Sturts is and how efficient that offense is through him and that system. And kind of another Big Ten team that I guess could be kind of comparable is Braden Smith and Purdue. Like, I really like. I think Braden Smith was obviously one of the best players, especially in the Big Ten. Forget exactly, but I think he led the Big Ten in scoring and steals or assists and steals or something like that. He's just, a walking bucket when he wants to be. He can catch fire, pushes the pace, and, natural point guard, good instincts, forcing turnovers. There was one game versus Michigan last year where they just ran the brakes off of him and, like, ran him off the court. But then Michigan got him back a little bit later in the year as well, so a little back and forth. But, Michigan adding Jaxa Lendenberg as well was on here. I want to give him a shout. That one I'm interested to see. But so some interesting Big Ten storylines, and kind of interested to see where Braden Smith and Bennett Sturts end up in the draft lottery talks. Do they not draft lottery necessarily, but just the draft prospect big board talks in general, and similar for Jaxa Lendenberg and JoJo Tugler. I think I had both of those pairs as prospects kind of similarly viewed last year. So I want to see who kind of separates themselves, because I think any of them, especially especially Sturts, but really any of them could kind of pop up and be a clear NBA guy. Talking NBA draft this time next year.
Yeah, and again, a lot of that goes back to the NIL conversation we had as well earlier. That like these guys are literally getting paid more to stay in college than they would be being borderline first round, early second round picks in the NBA. Like,
For sure.
and for someone who's as plugged into college basketball as I am, like that's great for the sport. Like, I love the NBA too. Don't get me wrong. I love the NBA draft. I love all of it. But I would much rather see a guy who's dominant in college basketball come back to college basketball than be, the 7th or 8th guy on an NBA bench for an extra year. Like that, from that aspect, from a fan perspective, I think people should love NIL because it's keeping good players in the sport. Like, even 3 years ago, Yaxel, even Braden Smith, probably JT Toppin, those might be the 3 top guys to win National Player of the Year. Literally, in Vegas odds, those might be the top 3. All 3 of them are back this year. And they might be 3 best players in the sport. All 3 might be first-team All-Americans. And a couple of years ago, none of those 3 are coming back. At least not Yaxel and Toppin. For sure.
Right, absolutely. I mean, great points there. It reminds me of I think one of the best parts of college sports is that familiarity with the players. Being around a team, a program for 2 or 3 years, you root for the guy, you root for the ups and downs. You want to see them succeed that way, and we lose a little bit of that when it just becomes one and done across the board. So we're kind of seeing it flip back on its head a little bit. NIL incentivizes these top prospects, as you're saying, to literally forego being an NBA player to stay one more year as a college player, because the salary just is that competitive, and also the role and the opportunity to maybe earn more on the back end, as an NBA player. So there's a lot of different, kind of question marks and things to weigh as a prospect. Like, is it worth starting your NBA salary trajectory 1 year earlier because you have that 7-year window as like a rookie with the rookie extension before it really like blows up to your opportunity to make the big bucks, those $50 million, $100 million deals? Do you start that process early if you're that good? Or, you kind of look at it 1 year at a time and you're like, maybe you're a possible second round pick. A lot of guys would prefer to like go undrafted than be a second round pick so they can pick their own destination. So like there are more and more incentives to get paid to play somewhere else and have a bigger role, and maybe cash in that bigger role on the flip side. Kind of betting on yourself is really how I view that decision to
look at RJ Luis, for example. He was biggest player of the year for St. John's. Could have went back, could have transferred, entered the portal. He probably would have been a $3 million player in the portal if I had to estimate it. He ends up going undrafted, signing a 2-way with Utah Jazz. Now he already got traded to the Boston Celtics. So it's like, on a 2-way, like, you're literally a fringe NBA player. You're probably a G Leaguer more than you're an NBA player at that point. So it's like he could have gotten the most money he might ever make in his life playing basketball if he just went back for a senior year and transferred somewhere, Like, that's just another example of, like, why Toppin, why Yaxel, why Braden Smith are back in college for another year. Like, so many guys getting paid NIL are going to get more money in 1 year playing basketball than they'll ever get in the rest of their career. It's just a matter of fact. Yeah, it's a matter of fact. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're at, and that's a good enough, a clear incentive to stay put. I got three storylines left for you, unless you have any other that pop out. If any of these, excite you for next season, it just say the word. We got Calipari continuity, as you said. DJ Wagner, Carter Knox, Trevon Brazil are coming back, but they also add Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff, these high-level guards. Malik is a walking bucket. Acuff is really tough as well. I'm excited to see, does one of them get that old Calipari Kentucky guard tag in the draft where they are just easy bets in the draft because of that talent? Or how does it play out at the college level? We got Kentucky, Mark Pope, adding Jaden Quaintance, one of the top defensive prospects in the whole draft class. Also, Jalon Lowe, so some real talent joining Kentucky. But then I have a little higher up here, Kansas. You got Darren Peterson and Flory Badunga and I'm thinking as like a draft haul, that would be one of the coolest, best draft hauls you could get for any NBA team. But then I'm interested. You go on in the article say it's a little top heavy, not a ton of depth. So I'm interested to see kind of how Kansas looks next year with arguably the best player not in the NBA right now, and Darren Peterson as just this one of the best guard prospects I've ever seen. I don't know what to do with the hyperbole. I'll go over the top with it. Like he's just electric on both ends. So how does that translate to winning as maybe just a one-man show on the college level? But you still got Badunga, a nice defensive anchor there to cover up some things as well. So is there enough depth there to have some real rotations, or is it just kind of a killer on paper draft haul that any NBA team would be thrilled to walk away with those two?
Of course. It's interesting because like I'm in my low 30s in terms of my age, and I grew up with Kansas winning 14 straight Big 12 championships. Now Houston joins the conference and Houston wins back-to-back years. So I preface that to say Kansas had, I think, its worst 2-year stretch. Actually, they've still been great. Don't get me wrong, though, Kansas. But they had the worst 2-year stretch in quite some time the last 2 years. So if they didn't have that coming into this year, I don't think I'd be as concerned. But as we alluded to earlier, like Coach K retiring, Jim Boeheim retiring, Jay Wright, Tony Bennett, because they didn't like the landscape of college basketball, I personally can't help to think maybe Bill Self, again, Hall of Fame coach, maybe the best in the sport, but maybe Bill Self doesn't really have the NIL transfer portal landscape down, and that's what ultimately led to a lot of his peers retiring early. But I will say this. In college basketball, the two things you really need to have a very good team is a great point guard and a good center. Kansas checks both of those boxes. It's just the remaining of the roster, in my opinion, is not up to Kansas standards. Like, you're assuming Flory's going to take a big enough of a leap. I think he will, but there's still some assumption there. Outside of him and Darian Peterson, then who is it? I mean, Melvin Council, the St. Bonaventure transfer. Is it Dawson from Loyola Chicago? Like, those are probably next two best guys from mid-major conferences. Which just, I'm down on Kansas again. If Kansas ends up being like a 3 seed in March Madness, it's not going to surprise me. I'm kind of hedging my bets there because they're Kansas and because it's Bill Self. But like, just looking at the roster on paper, it is not up to Kansas standards. That's what I will say.
Well, there we go. That's a big what if, and I can't wait to see Darren on the national landscape, the ESPN, the top 10 plays, like just getting all the credit that he deserves as one of these top prospects. And we'll see if it translates to that success at the college level. But definitely excited to see how he dominates like he did at the last level as well. That's one of the most exciting. But I mean, the talent's really great, and like you said, like the NIL is a big reason that there is more depth of talent staying in the college level rather than going to the draft, and that could help kind of return a little balance to the playing field of just the level of and quality of college basketball going forward. If that's kind of the balance, the give and take that it reaches, and especially if they're like if the NBA doesn't necessarily think expansion drafts is the answer anytime soon, then this is kind of a way to balance out some of the talent, like you said, where you I think we all want to see talent like get opportunity and the biggest role possible, and a lot of that will happen more so at the collegiate level or the G League level, getting more touches, bigger roles for guys to maybe bet on themselves, get the opportunity to then get that bigger contract the next year. So looking at some of these big contracts, switching over to the NBA a little bit, I thought you could help walk me through, and the listeners here, for the Orlando Magic's cap situation. Like, explain the Orlando Magic cap situation like I'm 5 years old to me. Like, just start from the beginning, whatever you need to do. Like, I'll pull up the multi-year table here as my face gets real bright by doing so. And as I do that, some questions I have in general are just to think about as we're looking at this are like, what did they lock themselves into here? What's realistically possible going forward? What tough decisions do they have to make at some point? And mostly, can they just keep their top 4, top 5 guys intact throughout the length of these deals, or is there a tough decision looming? When Paolo's max kicks in a year or two, or whatever that is. So let me pull up. Hopefully this works here, but pull up the second screen, and we should be good to go. So I got the Spotrac table here. If you can see it there. So that goes through the salary cap sheet for the Magic for the next few years. And so the first thing that stands out to me is that, the Desmond Bane deal and the Jalen Suggs deal. Desmond Bane is on a relative max for him, I think, starting at 36 mil, that goes up to 44 mil, 45 mil. And what I think helps make that much more possible is that Jalen Suggs is on the descending deal at relatively the same rate, where they both deals basically average out to like 35 million every single year. One's just going up and the other's going down. So that, I think, ultimately is the factor that allows the Magic to hold on to all 4 of these guys through all the deals. But that's just how I see it. I could be totally wrong. What am I missing? What stands out to you about like the Magic's flexibility going forward? Or is it officially kind of, this is who they are and there's no way out?
I wouldn't say there's no way out, because like the Boston Celtics were a different situation when they started cutting down the salary, this year, when Tatum tore his Achilles, because they, I think, had the highest luxury tax bill ever in NBA history. So like they were so deep into it that there was really no way out. Orlando's not even in either apron this year. Just for perspective, they are hard capped at the first apron. So that means they cannot go into the first apron at any point this year. They legally cannot. So they're a tax team. They'll probably be a tax team, I would say, the remainder of this year. But they're, again, not going into either apron to the point where, like, it's no going back from there. They saw the East was wide open, which it is, with Dame and Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum all tearing their Achilles. It said, okay, it's either the Cavs or the Knicks. Why can't it be us as the third team there to really compete and go for it? So for them, they traded for Desmond Bane, as they should have. And the way I'm envisioning it is, okay, let's give this 2 or 3 years and we'll reevaluate. Like, if we need to move someone at that point, maybe 2 years from now, then they will. But they do have time to reevaluate it. The Jalen Suggs descending contract, as you said, does help. But what also helps is Jonathan Isaac's deal, which, after this year, is only guaranteed for $8 million. It's 14.5 on the books for next year, but only $8 million of it is guaranteed. If he plays over 52 games, then it becomes fully guaranteed, I believe, at 14.5. But let's say that does happen. Let's say Isaac plays at least 52 games, and he's fully guaranteed next year at $14.5 million. The mid-level exception next year is $15 million. Are you really going to tell me there's not a team out there that would just not take Jonathan Isaac into the full mid-level? With how free agency's been the last few years?
Right.
There's definitely a team that's going to say, oh yeah, you could solidly dump him into our mid-level, that's fine. So that's a contract I think they're going to have to get off one way or the other, whether it's the non-guaranteed route or it's the just salary dumping route. So I think he's going to be the biggest roster casualty one way or the other. I'm looking this year again. They're hard capped at the first apron, so this year there's not going to be much flexibility. They have to shed salary, if anything, really. This is the roster they're basically locked into, and they'll have to do almost an identical salary matching trade, or they'll have to what's what I'm looking for? Shed salary essentially in another deal. If they do any deadline deals or anything like that.
So this year, to be clear, you're saying they are hard capped first apron this year. They have any deals they make have to be like the penalty for that is they have to perfectly match salary for any deal.
I think they're 1.2 million under the first apron. So they could theoretically, okay, this guy makes $8 million. Let's say Ty Jones makes $7 million. Let's say they trade for an $8.1 million player. That works. Because
Okay.
they then be $100,000 under their. They can't go over. They can't go into first safe territory. So they still have like a $1.2 million flexibility. But NBA money is so hard to get within that close that odds are if they make a trade, they'll shed salary basically.
Yeah.
So no, it doesn't need to be an identical match, but they either have to take a little over $1 million or they have to shed basically.
Okay. And
in any deal this year.
So I really like the depth that they have here. There's a lot of good mixes of like young veterans who have to prove themselves, but also have some proven experience in like Mo Wagner and Goga Batadze, who are probably past prospect point in their career. I mean, Mo's already 28 and Goga's already 26. Wendell is 26 as well. And then you also have some rookies, Jace Richardson, Noah Penda, and like sophomores, Tristan Silva, Jett Howard, fighting for some playing time. So the depth is interesting. And Mo Wagner, like for example, is on like a prove yourself deal where he's on a $5 million. I think it's a 1+1 for I think it's a team option, but I'm not exactly sure if I got that right here. But he's on a 1+1, I believe. Maybe it's just one.
I was gonna say it says UFA, so
yeah, I could just be wrong on that one. So it's just a 1-year deal, so it's kind of betting on himself. Goga is on a 2-year deal. These are the guys that I think are like the Magic, in my opinion. They have so much salary committed to front court stars, big wing stars, and their 2 guard stars that their center depth is more complementary depth of options, that guys that do different things, bring different things to the table. And they're also financially very compatible where they can fit, I mean, I would say 4 or 5 bigs on this roster to give themselves that depth. And all of them, are $5 million for Mo Wagner, $8 million for Goga, $10 million for Wendell. It jumps up to $20 million next year. You mentioned $15 million for Isaac. That's only guaranteed at 8. They just give themselves all these options where you have depth for playing, you have depth for injuries, you have depth for possible trades. Because as you say, not everyone here is safe. Like that's kind of my ultimate question: is at what point do they have to make a really hard decision about this roster where maybe Franz and Bain and Suggs and Paolo are safe, but can they also keep Wendell with that group at $20 million? And with Anthony Black coming up for his restricted free agency or an extension, he's a coveted player around the league. Are they going to be able to keep him too? Like, do you think at the very least, like, who do you think is safe? When do you think a big decision is there going to be a point where they just cannot afford to keep Wendell Carter and Anthony Black as well going forward, say in year 2 or year 3 of this thing?
So those are the 2 names I was actually going to say next.
Okay.
So I'm glad you brought it up. I think you hit the. I'm using a lot of analogies today. What's the expression? Hit the nail
on the head.
Nail on the head. I wouldn't say hammer on the head, but nonetheless,
nailed it.
It's weird because, as I said, Jonathan Isaac's probably the first casualty. So does that make Wendell then the second casualty? Then you're down 2 big men? I think Goga and Mo Wagner are good enough to be the rotation, and then you just get like I don't know. I love Paul Reed as like a high-end third big if you don't have a dynamite starting center. Like, could you just move Mo Wagner? Like, Ty Jones is expiring. Could you move Wendell Carter next year for a point guard? Especially if you're moving Black, too. Get Wendell Carter for a point guard, sign a high-level third big, and then that's your team next year. Like, I think that's feasible.
Yeah.
Black, I don't know. Black, I think, is going to have to take a big jump this year. Probably for Orlando's sake, because, again, they're not going to be able to afford to pay him. If I'm Orlando, I'm almost hoping Anthony Black is mediocre, so I could sign him to a reasonable rookie extension and just have a good playmaker, which is something they need, on a reasonable deal. Because if he blows up, they're not going to be able to pay him Jalen Suggs money. Because they're already paying Jalen Suggs money.
Exactly. I think that's kind of my point on him is that Anthony Black is that wild card for this team where like he's an X factor already in terms of on the court production. He's coveted around the league as a prospect, as like a trade asset or a player that pretty much any team would like. And as you mentioned, like even if he's not his best self, like he's still just a helpful winning player that does a lot of things right, especially defensively. He just shows up and can be a connector offensively. Just really like really smart player and rooting for his success. I think he's gonna blow up a little bit, and that's kind of what I'm worried about. Is that I don't really think Orlando's going to be able to afford all six of these guys. Now that's where it gets to like Kristaps and Drew Holiday and the Celtics level of needing to shed that salary, where you just have too many max guys. Because just looking ahead a few years, in 28-29, if you add their top four guys together, that's $168 million of what I assume is like 200 million worth of a cap space. So let me ask one more thing here about kind of these big deals. Is this also a bet against as the salary cap itself like constantly rising? Like is there any chance that the salary cap rises to such a point by the end of these deals 28, 29, 29, 30 that we already kind of know the projections are that they're always going up. Is there a chance that this isn't like a totally hemorrhaging roster 4 years from now between just those four costing 168 million? Like, is there a chance that the cap space just like jumps up so much that it won't really be as big of a percentage of the cap for the team to have to worry as much about?
What year are you talking about? 28, 29?
Yeah, that was the one I picked. That
Yeah.
right before
Okay.
Desmond Bain goes UFA, where he comes off the books in 29. Right before that is probably the most expensive year, I would imagine. It's 168 million in 28-29 for their top four players. So, like, if you add Wendell's 21 million to that, you're already at 190 million out of what I think is like 200 total. So maybe I'm wrong about the total there, percentage
So,
wise.
what was that number you said? 168 for those four?
Yeah, so 28-29, 168 million for the top four players.
So in 2029, again, these are all projections. We're not going to know the cap number until July 1st of 2028,
Yeah,
essentially. It's projected at about 182 million.
yeah.
So those four are
Right.
168. But when the cap rises that much, so does the luxury tax amount. You have $40 million of wiggle room before your tax team. So theoretically, Orlando would have 168 for those four guys. They have up until 221 million to be a luxury tax team. So they have about, if they want to avoid the tax that year, $53 million still to work with. But $53 million to work with isn't going to be that much to fill out a roster of at least 10 more guys 4 years from now with how the cap's rising. Like, the mid-level exception alone in 2028-29, let's see, is going to be $16.6 million.
Mm.
So, and
That's for an
it's,
MLE level guy.
yeah, and I'm happy that you wanted to talk about Orlando when you asked me to come on, because Orlando's such an odd one, because we don't know if they're going to be contenders or not. We don't know. With this ownership group, I don't think has ever really paid the tax. And they have
Yeah,
a GM who's never had to navigate around the tax or the apron like it's not like it's the Clippers where we're seeing Lawrence Frank and previously Jerry West, may he rest in peace, navigate through the cap as frequently as they did and pay the luxury tax and deal with the aprons. Like, even the Clippers and the Warriors, who had the two biggest luxury tax bills ever and were perpetual taxpayers, they got out of the tax 2 years into this new CBA.
Hmm.
So, I will say this. The repeater tax, you have to be in the tax 3 out of 4 years. So, it basically gives them a 2-year window to figure it out. This year and next year. Then they need to start making moves. And again, this is a GM in a front office. A president of basketball operations in a front office who's never really had to navigate those waters before. So I'm very interested to see. It's why it's making Orlando so fun. Like, the conundrum of how do they figure it out.
yeah. It's super interesting for all those reasons. And to your point, the ownership really hasn't been tested like this. Like they went all in for, say, the Rashard Lewis big contract back then. That was a little like questionable at the time. It was an overpay for a reason, but like they did it to become contenders. And David Steele actually on this podcast compared the Desmond Bay trade to that moment for the team, the vibe around the culture, and similar to adding Horace Grant to the Shaq team as well, is what he said. Just the idea of like we clearly got something cooking here. We have a few stars. Let's add like a proven guy that fits the need and really take this next jump. And you hit on all the reasons. Like I do think that the East opening up is what allowed kind of a little more incentive for the Magic front office and ownership to just be all in on, let's just push the chips in now. Like we know what we have, we know what we need. Let And whether or not Bain was available before they actually made the offer, who really knows? The rumor is that he was available, and then they went in and just threw an offer they could not refuse for Bain, and they made it happen. And to me, it's exactly what they needed. I'm excited to see how it plays out for sure. And to highlight some of the other deals, like what's really important, like take the 28-29 year. One thing that stands out is the only other guys that will be on the roster by that point are the rookies today. Noah Penda and Jace Richardson are the only ones that are definitely still there. And the idea that you could have potential rotation players on rookie deals while you're paying the max contracts is really attractive financially in this situation, where you can get legit role guys on $3 million, $5 million, $7 million deals that are, like you said, are like half as much as the MLE, where you might get a veteran with that same level of impact who's got more years of service. But you have like where the Magic are half expecting Penda and Jace Richardson to maybe have roles this year, let alone 4 years from now. So I think that this is a great time for them because there are a few more proven vets. We had Corey Joseph last year. They have Tyus Jones this year. And Jace Richardson probably will kind of take the reins going forward after that. So you get to kind of get some experience from the rookies up behind the vets this year. It's just a good mix match. Same with Jonathan Isaac and Penda. I think they have some similar roles. So that's some examples of where you might see Isaac and Tyus Jones have bigger roles this year. And then once while at the same time, the team probably knows they might be moving on from some of these guys eventually going forward. They might be kind of stopgaps to fill the roles this year while developing some of the younger guys who can fit in the plan going forward. That's where I think like Tristan Da Silva, I'll throw in that group as well, of Jace Rich and Noah Penda, where I think those three are going to be role players in Orlando for a long time because they are just good role guys that do the little things right and fit around, and ideally should fit around the stars. So I think those three particularly are just going to be on good team-friendly deals. Obviously, the rookie deals, we'll see about if they extend to team-friendly deals, but I think they'll just be good role guys that won't pop up too much and cost too much. They'll just kind of be in Orlando's system going forward, those three. And then Anthony Black and Wendell are kind of the big wild cards, like we mentioned, where it's just going to be hard to afford all of them. Like to full circle that 1 year, we said it was about 100. They had about 50 million to play with to fill out a rotation. Well, if the two rookies are costing about 10, that leaves about 40 million for, I don't know, 7 guys. And I think Wendell at 20 million is probably not gonna be in the team's plans at that point. I don't know. That's a big question mark to me. I don't. Who the heck knows? We're talking 4 years out. But I think he's the big question mark. Where will they be able to afford Wendell 20 million? Because he really, I don't want to underrate it. Like he's very vital. Probably the most underrated player in the whole Magic scheme of things is Wendell Carter, and the hustle and the toughness that he brings at the big man position. So if he can just kind of round out his 3-point shot and some of his like strength down low, I think they really want to keep him as that moldable 5 modern big man. But that 20 million mark is just really going to be tough. Are there any like big decisions you think that maybe I skipped over here where like for example, if they wanted to hit the big red button 2 years from now, like you said, maybe the Bane Suggs fit isn't exactly what they pictured. They could still just flip, like, I don't know, totally fake trade, like a Suggs and an Anthony Black for a Trey Young or something. There's nothing stopping them from doing some massive other trade like that, is there?
Is there anything stopping them from doing?
Financially, is there anything stopping them from like hitting the big red button 2 years from now and repackaging, say, two of their best young players? Obviously, it would have to be a fair trade, but like if they threw
Yeah.
Suggs, Anthony Black, and Wendell in a trade and brought back a star like a Trey Young or a LaMelo Ball or something, is there anything stopping them financially from hitting the big red button around these stars? Like I don't think they're as stuck necessarily as people might think.
I don't want to say yes, I don't want to say no. And I know that's a very lawyer answer, but I'm just looking. Next year they're already $800,000 over the second apron. Again, Jonathan Isaac shedding that money gets them under the first apron.
Yeah, I would say not to just to say one thing that
Sure.
to me is like they are 100% not gonna commit to that. Like, there's no reason they should stick in the second apron for the role players necessarily as much as they would for the stars.
If they could navigate around the tax of the first apron, then there's nothing realistically preventing them, assuming they're sending out more money than they take in. The one thing that if they are a first apron team, they can't do is they can't take in more money than they're sending out. So if whatever it is, Suggs, if we're talking next year, let's say, if they stay at the first apron and do Suggs, Carter, and, as you said, Black or whoever, maybe Jet Howard, those three, if Trey Young or LaMelo make less than what those three make, which I believe they would, then it works financially.
There you go.
It just gets tricky as a second apron team because, again, you can't aggregate salary, so it has to be a 1-for-1, and that's where. So as long as Orlando's not a second apron team, it's feasible.
Yeah, well, there it is. I really wanted to highlight that. I think a lot of teams, and sometimes like the Thunder have the ability to do both, but a lot of teams have to either stay flexible or cash in that flexibility. And the Magic have stayed flexible for years, and they finally found the time to strike while the iron's hot to use that flexibility to actually bring in a star that's worth it. Like the whole point of the flexibility, the whole point of creating cap space is to bring in the talent. Like it's to use the talent or use the trade assets to acquire the star. And the Magic finally did it. And I can't wait to see how it plays out. I definitely think I'm interested to see how the roster shakes out. But I think this first year with minimal expectations, some question marks around fit where guys can still kind of earn their role. I think Orlando's in a great spot where they expect to take a little leap themselves, and I'm sure they'd be happy just winning a playoff series first and foremost going forward. But I think they officially have stamped themselves as like, we're ready to contend because of this move, and I can't wait to see it. Is there anything else about this cap sheet, or even cap sheets, or any other teams in general that you wanted to hit on and highlight or compare the situation to at all that might make sense for the listeners a little bit about, any other teams that are close to these aprons that, have to deal with anything? You hit on Boston already, how what they had to go through.
Ooh. Final note about Orlando real quick. What I will say is this team definitely prioritizes fit on their roster. Like, all these guys fit so well what they do defensively. Like,
oh yeah,
Bane fits everything they needed to do offensively. Like, Wendell Carter, I think, fits the Orlando Magic better than he fits any other team in the NBA.
Sure.
And I think teams know that when they would do a trade for him. In terms of any other team, I'm interested to see what Cleveland does, I would say, because I think Cleveland might be the only team currently in the second apron, if I'm not mistaken, right now. Is Phoenix out of the second apron? Let me look real quick. I don't want to misspeak. Boston got out of it. Phoenix is still in it, I think. Let me see.
Oh, wow.
Phoenix is 273 away from being out of the tax completely. I must be forgetting a trade that they made. I know, obviously, KD, but there had to have been a subsequent move. Nonetheless, Cleveland's really the only team that's basically not too intimidated by the second apron, that they know, okay, we're close enough to competing. I mean, they all close. They said best record in the NBA, but like they may be close enough to winning a championship that they just said we're going to keep going forward. I'm interested in OKC as well. Obviously, they can't just keep paying everybody. Chet and Jalen Williams just both got extensions. SGA just took the biggest extension in NBA history as well in terms of annual value. So it's just very interesting to see how these guys are going to navigate it. But like again, if you're going to keep winning, why not keep paying, regardless of what they're like. OKC, okay, freeze our pick for being in the second apron for too many years. We have 1 million of them. Go ahead. Like, that's why it's just like, it's going to be, those are the two teams I would say. But OKC especially, because all those guys are getting paid at once, essentially. I will say, Isaiah Hardenstein expires when Chet and J-Dub kick in. But like, Hardenstein's a valuable piece. They probably want to keep him around. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and they just drafted a guy that could be his heir apparent, kind of down low as a center. Really, one of my favorite fits in the whole draft. And that's a pretty interesting strategy Thunder-wise, that they can avoid the penalties by just having more picks. Like you're not really penalizing them because they've had such a good process that it doesn't actually hurt. So they can maybe take another hit of kind of that hit directly. It's not as big of a penalty because of the great process that they've done there, and adding Thomas Sorber as well to that big man rotation. Like I think he is the heir apparent, where maybe they won't have to pay Hartenstein again because of him. But like you said, like he's a vital part of a championship team. They reserve their flexibility for those big moves of bringing in Caruso and Hartenstein, and these are guys they rewarded. They got rewarded for it. They have so many young guys behind them, so it's definitely interesting. They can't pay everyone, but they have a lot of talent. You probably get some team friendly deals when you're in a winning culture like that. So Hartenstein was worth the big free agent splash this first time around. Like that's the best way to use their money. They won the chip off of it, and we'll see. I think now it's just kind of collecting the spoils and trying to find that balance going forward. But hey, man, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It's been fun diving into college hoops and just learning a little bit about salary caps and what the Magic's future looks like. Congrats again on becoming certified NIL agent. Wish you the best of luck in that world, navigating that space, and hosting these podcasts. So always fun talking hoops, man. You can find Steven's work at the NBA Goal. And yeah, man, anything you want to plug off as we leave here?
The one thing I do want to plug is the Center Hub is doing a college basketball. We're calling it a magazine. It's a PDF magazine publication. It's our first year doing it, covering all 365 Division I college basketball teams. We have so far 140 head coaches that we're interviewing to get insight on their teams. I'm hoping to crack 200, if I'm being honest. But we have 140 lined up right now. Exclusive interviews. You'll see quotes from that throughout the magazine. Be on the lookout. It's $12. Go pre-order it. You can find the link in the Center Hub's bio at @thecenterhub_BB. If you need to DM me to get the link, it's at @the_NBAGEL. That's NBAGELL. I promise you, it'll be worth the $12. First year publication. Please go support it. I don't need the money. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I want to get my writers paid. I don't do the media stuff for the money. But my writers have worked way too hard freelance to not get paid. So for them, please purchase it. Thank you. I appreciate you, Ryan. I appreciate Swish Theory. Love what you guys do over there, and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I can't wait to check it out. I'm hoping to see like a cool digital magazine cover like the old Slam covers back in the day. That always draws me in, the cool design of the magazine covers. So excited to check that out. You got to find his work and all of that at the Center Hub. But yeah, man, thanks a lot. It was super interesting. Appreciate it. Always fun talking hoops. Thanks for taking time today, Steven. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.